Brad Keselowski has just put a quiet NASCAR technical change under the spotlight, and fans are starting to wonder what really happened behind the scenes. While most NASCAR fans focus on crashes, rivalries, and controversial finishes, some of the biggest competitive battles are actually happening inside the garage. Modern NASCAR teams spend countless hours studying aerodynamics, engineering data, simulations, and tiny details that can create an advantage on the racetrack. And that's exactly why a small technical change to the next-gen car can become a much bigger story than it initially appears. With Ford, Chevrolet, and Toyota all fighting for the same championship, even a minor aerodynamic adjustment can potentially shift the competitive balance. Brad Keselowski understands that better than almost anyone, because he's not only driving in the Cup Series, he's also involved in the ownership and engineering side of the sport. When Keselowski suggested that this particular change was a bigger deal than the media coverage made it seem, people inside the garage immediately started paying attention. The timing makes the situation even more important because the 2026 playoffs are getting closer and every competitive advantage could have championship-level consequences. And at the center of this entire conversation is one seemingly simple component on the next-gen car, the front splitter. So the big question is this: why did NASCAR reinforce the splitter, and was there something happening with that component that fans weren't seeing? Brad Keselowski was the one who turned this quiet technical change into a much bigger NASCAR conversation. His short comment calling the change a big deal may have sounded simple, but coming from someone with his experience, it immediately raised eyebrows. Keselowski isn't just a Cup Series driver. As an RFK Racing co-owner, he understands the engineering and competition decisions happening behind the scenes. The story goes back to NASCAR requiring teams to add additional support struts to the front splitter of the next-gen car. The goal was to reduce movement and prevent excessive deformation when the splitter was subjected to heavy aerodynamic loads at high speed. On paper, that sounds like a straightforward technical adjustment designed to keep the component stable. But inside the garage, teams quickly started asking whether splitter movement had been giving someone an advantage under the previous rules. That question became even more interesting because Toyota had already established itself as the manufacturer to beat during much of the season. Suddenly, a component most fans barely think about was being connected to one of the biggest competitive debates in NASCAR. But there's one important point. NASCAR has never officially confirmed that the splitter change was designed to target Toyota. The front splitter may look like just another piece of the race car, but at NASCAR speeds, its aerodynamic behavior can have a major impact on performance. Under the previous setup, enormous aerodynamic forces were constantly pushing against the front of the next-gen car as it raced around the track. That pressure could cause the splitter to move or deform, which is exactly why NASCAR introduced additional support struts. The reinforcement was designed to keep the splitter more stable and reduce movement under heavy aerodynamic loads. And that's where the technical debate begins, because even a small change in airflow underneath the car can affect its overall aerodynamic balance. Engineers immediately started studying how the reinforced splitter would change the behavior of the next-gen car on the racetrack. The timing was especially interesting because Toyota had been producing extremely strong results before the change. Some people began wondering whether splitter behavior could have been contributing to that advantage. But nobody officially proved that Toyota had actually found a way to exploit splitter flex. So instead of confirming a hidden Toyota advantage, the rule change created an even bigger question about what was really making Toyota so fast. And this is where Toyota suddenly becomes the center of the entire conversation. For much of the 2026 season, Toyota has looked incredibly strong, with Joe Gibbs Racing and 2311 Racing consistently putting cars near the front. The Toyota next-gen cars haven't just been fast at one type of track. They've shown impressive pace across completely different racing conditions. That consistency is exactly why any technical change affecting aerodynamic performance was going to attract serious attention from rival teams. Some speculations suggested Toyota teams may have found a way to maximize splitter movement under the previous rules without technically breaking NASCAR regulations. If that theory were true, It could potentially explain part of the performance gap that Ford and Chevrolet have struggled to close. But there's a major problem with that theory. Nobody has officially proven it. NASCAR has not confirmed that Toyota gained an advantage from splitter flex, and teams remain divided over how important the component actually was. What isn't speculation, however, is Toyota's performance on the racetrack, and that raises the bigger question. If the splitter was really responsible for Toyota's advantage, why did Toyota continue performing so strongly after NASCAR reinforced it? The numbers are what make Toyota's dominance impossible to ignore. Through 22 races, Toyota had already collected 13 victories, while Chevrolet had 6 and Ford had only 3. For a next-gen car designed to keep the manufacturers competitive, that is a massive imbalance. Toyota's strength has been especially obvious through the combined performance of Gibbs Racing and 23XI Racing. Instead of seeing one Toyota car occasionally steal a victory, fans have repeatedly watched multiple Toyota machines fighting at the front. Then came North Wilkesboro, the first race after the reinforced splitter became mandatory. Toyota immediately delivered another warning by placing 4 cars inside the top 6. And if the splitter reinforcement was supposed to eliminate a major Toyota advantage, those results certainly didn't make that obvious. Then Indianapolis produced another huge Toyota performance, with Toyota cars finishing 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 5th. Those results made one thing clear. Toyota's advantage may be much bigger than a single component on a race car. And this is where the story goes much deeper than a front splitter. Modern NASCAR championships aren't built only during the race weekend. Much of the real advantage is created inside engineering departments. Teams are constantly analyzing simulations, telemetry, aerodynamics, tires, and thousands of pieces of performance data. Toyota appears to have developed a powerful technical ecosystem where information can move between its major racing organizations. Gibbs Racing, 23XI Racing, and Legacy Motor Club can potentially share ideas and technical knowledge, helping the entire manufacturer program improve. Instead of every organization trying to solve the same problem alone, successful solutions can spread across multiple teams. That kind of collaboration becomes extremely valuable when tiny performance differences can determine whether a car finishes 1st or 15th. While fans watch drivers battle on the track, another competition is happening behind the scenes between engineers searching for the next advantage. And if Toyota's strength comes from that entire engineering ecosystem, changing one component like the splitter may never be enough to slow them down. That could be the real reason Ford and Chevrolet need more than a rule change if they want to close the gap. For Brad Keselowski and RFK Racing, the answer isn't to complain about Toyota's success or ask NASCAR to artificially level the playing field. Brad has made it clear that Ford needs to take responsibility for closing the performance gap. Despite the frustration surrounding Ford's season, Keselowski has continued to show confidence in the manufacturer's long-term direction. He has also pushed back against speculation that RFK Racing could eventually leave Ford, making it clear that the organization remains committed to its manufacturer. But commitment alone doesn't put cars in victory lane. Ford still needs more speed, and that means improving its engineering, aerodynamic package, and overall next-gen performance. There is at least one major reason for Ford fans to look toward the future, with a redesigned Ford body expected for the 2027 season. That new body could give Ford an opportunity to rethink its aerodynamic package and attack some of the weaknesses exposed during this season. But Keselowski can't afford to simply wait for 2027, because the remaining regular season races could determine whether Ford enters the playoffs with momentum or continues chasing Toyota. Now, there are only 4 races left before the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs, and every single one could change the championship picture. Iowa, Richmond, New Hampshire, and Daytona will give Ford and Chevrolet 4 final opportunities to challenge Toyota before the postseason begins. At Iowa, fans will be watching closely to see whether the manufacturer gap finally starts to shrink or whether Toyota continues controlling the front of the field. Then Richmond and New Hampshire will provide completely different challenges, where short track performance and race strategy could shake up the standings. And finally, Daytona could create the biggest wild card of them all, because one mistake or one perfectly timed move can completely change a driver's playoff hopes. For Brad Keselowski and Ford, these races aren't just about collecting points. They're a chance to prove that the performance gap can actually be closed. For Toyota, meanwhile, the goal is simple. Continue doing exactly what has worked all season and carry that momentum into the playoffs. And that's what makes this entire splitter controversy so fascinating, because the next 4 races could reveal whether NASCAR's technical change actually mattered. If Toyota continues dominating, it will become even harder to blame one component for their success. But if Ford or Chevrolet suddenly close the gap, fans may start looking back at that quiet splitter change very differently. Either way, Brad Keselowski has turned a technical detail most fans never noticed into a story worth watching all the way to the playoffs.